Yo, how you doing? Welcome to my channel, Heidi's Corner, with me, Heidi. In my studio, my home studio, we have Stefan, the can hedgehog. He won't leave that. And then we have Bertil, my resident baby moving forefather. So, today is an episode of Special Files with Borg Skeptic. How you doing?
I'm doing absolutely fine tonight. Thank you very much. How are you?
Doing good. So today is a special files for life as an asexual. So Borg Skeptic, could you, for the viewers who have no idea who you are, shame on you if you don't, but could you tell something about yourself?
Yeah, so I run the Borg Skeptic channel on YouTube. I primarily deal with atheist topics, ex-religion, deconversion stories, that sort of thing. I also have my own show on the Promethean secular frontier as well, which if you're a secular humanist and you fit with those values, I would definitely suggest checking out that channel as well, because we've got some really good stuff going on over there.
All right, fair enough. I will link both channels in the description box below. Borg Skeptic channel is already there, but the other channel I just absolutely forgot. But I will link it in the description box, which you will then hopefully go and check out after this stream. On April 23rd of this year, I had a Friday Facts episode of what asexuality is, but I did go into a bit more detail on what the asexuality or the term asexual entails, or what it means, what asexuality is. But I never got I did not get into what the life is like as an asexual, because I had no idea. Personally, I am not asexual. I have no idea what it's like living as an asexual in modern society, which unfortunately modern society, or at least the Western society, evolves around sex. At least a lot of it. They say sex sells. But what if you do not have any sexual desires or feelings toward, or any sexual urges? What it's like? Could you start and deciphering all this?
Well, there's different aspects to it. So, like, on a whole, it's things are a lot simpler when you don't when you have no urge to have sex. The whole relationship aspect is a hell of a lot simpler. There isn't any of the complications that having feelings towards people and stuff like that can bring. So things are simpler in that aspect. But then again, things are also harder in another aspect, which is, as you mentioned, society does revolve pretty much entirely around sex. You cannot go into any area of life without actually encountering these sexual urges that people have, and that can get quite complicated because, for one, people don't understand what it means, to not have a sexual desire. The amount of times that I tell people, "Oh, I'm asexual," when they make advances and stuff towards me, and they get angry. Even people who aren't making advances to me, they still get really angry. It's like some personal insult to them, because they cannot contemplate what it means not to want to have sex.
Yeah, it's perhaps when such situations happen, I can kind of see it in my eyes, what that situation would look like in real life, because I've never had such situation. However, I think that it might or might not be that these people sort of, because typically you're expected to have some some sort of a sex drive usually, and it could be that they have it as a sexual or or sort of that they are not desirable, but it's if you tell them, if you explicitly tell them that you are asexual, they should, in my in my not so humble opinion, it should be blatantly obvious that it's not an insult to them or to anyone. It's not about them. It's not them being undesirable. There could be, they most likely they are desirable, desirable in I mean this in a sexual way. They are sexually desirable to someone, most likely, but not to an asexual, which people need more reason and logic in this. But how do you think, if you wanted someone, what would be the, say, three most important things that this is what you shouldn't say to an asexual, especially in these situations that we just described?
Well, that's three most important things not to say to an asexual. Well, firstly, obviously don't make any sexual, connotations in remarks that you're making. So I mean, even if are attracted to an asexual or something like that, don't say anything about the sexy ass or out like that, stuff like that. You wouldn't want to be doing, obviously. Asexual's not gonna appreciate that much. But mainly, what people need to realize a little bit more is that just because someone isn't sexually attracted to you, it doesn't mean that they're not attracted to you in other ways. There's many different types of attractions.
Yeah.
So an asexual may still be romantically attracted.
Yes,
in some
exactly.
way. So there's that side of it, or intellectually attracted. Personally, me, I can be intellectually attracted to other people, which means that I'm more likely to make really strong bonds with people that I respect the intellect of.
Yeah, it's again one of these things that it's one of these situations that people tend to not be able to separate the sexual and romantic sides of of a human being, because there are, it's not just the urge, sexual urge is something that is very very separate from the romantic side, because it's like being trans, and it's not a sexual thing. It's not something that, like, it's gender, it's sex, but in the sense of biological sex, not the act of sex.
Yes.
Like if you're asexual, it doesn't mean that you don't have a gender or you're or you don't have a biological sex. You just don't have the urge to.
Exactly.
It,
You know,
and it's not something that I would say makes someone less of a human, that you just don't have a sex drive.
exactly, and it doesn't mean that you have to treat, really. I mean, you don't really have to treat the person who's asexual any differently than any other person, really.
No, yeah,
It's the same as, you know, an atheist. An atheist does not believe in God. It doesn't mean that the atheist doesn't want to talk about religion if the topic comes up. The atheist is quite happy to talk about religion. They're just going to have a different point of view to, say, someone who's theist. Same with an asexual. I'm quite happy to talk about sex with people, and you know, talk about the taboos of sex and stuff. I was actually on a show recently, on the Promethean Secular Frontier, talking about the taboos of sex, and you know, I'm quite happy to talk about that, even though I'm asexual. So you don't really have to treat the person any differently. You just have to keep in mind that the person isn't attracted to anyone in that way.
yeah.
But they still have a valuable opinion.
Yeah, of course. It doesn't make you. Of course, if you're an atheist, you lack the faith in God, or in any God for that matter. It doesn't. Why would that make you any less valid to talk about, say, cults?
Exactly.
For example, the person we both know and love, Lloyd Evans. He's atheist.
I love Lloyd.
Yeah, so do I. He is an atheist, but yet he talks quite. He makes videos for a living about his former cult. It doesn't make you unable to talk about sex either. It doesn't make you incapable of having the concept of sex.
Yeah. And sometimes the opinion as well, when you're on the outside of something, the opinion can be a little bit more full in some respects. So, like Lloyd Evans, he has, you know, if a Jehovah's Witness on the inside of the cult is not going to be seeing the full picture of things. But Lloyd Evans, being on the outside of that cult, he's able to, and not having that belief in God, he's able to give a much wider aspect, you know, to the whole topic. And I think that the same is true of, you know, asexuals, is we're able, because we're not inside the taboos of sex, when we don't have those drives, we're able to, you know, sit from a vantage point which is outside of the sexual realm, and you know, we're able to see things that maybe most other people who have sexual urges and do have sexual attraction don't actually see.
Exactly. It makes one perhaps more objective on certain subject.
Yes, we have no subjective view on that, other than we just don't have a subjective view. So yeah.
And so when you were growing up in the UK, did, for example, in elementary school, or in perhaps what do I call it in the UK?
Secondary
High school.
Yeah,
Secondary school, high school. Was there any? I would assume that there was some talk of sex at some point
of course.
in your years of schooling. What will there have been any real talk of or mentions of asexuality in your years of schooling?
Definitely not. Absolutely no mention of it whatsoever. Sex education in this country is completely 100%. You have to have a sexuality. It's just assuming that everyone's going to have a sexuality, which mirrors the society that we live in.
That which I mentioned to when we started. It's kind of curious that there will be mentions, teachers and so mentioning sex and stuff, and they, by all logic, they should. Most adults, even 20, 30 years ago, must have known that there are people who do not have a sex drive, or just don't want to have sex.
You'd think so.
It comes from? Where do you think it comes from that the teachers who know full well that there are asexuals, that they just don't talk about it?
Well, I think it can be mirrored to the whole thing like 100 years ago when there was people that knew that atheists existed, that there was people who did have no belief in God, but it was never spoke about. It was never taught that you could have those views. I think the same is happening today. We're in that special place where people know it exists, but people don't want to accept it exists. It goes against some normality. I like to describe it as people have little boxes inside the head, and when you meet people on the street, you have to try and fit people into those little boxes that you have already built out, into that worldview that you have. And if things don't fit into those little boxes, then it's abnormal. It's something weird. It's something that needs to be fought against. And that's just the sort of mentality we all have.
Would you describe it as some sort of like, hear no evil, speak no evil? In
a sense, yeah.
Yeah. How did that, or how, when it dawned on you back in the day that you have no sexual urges, or you feel nothing towards sexuality per se? How did it affect you that the school, that the society you live in and school you go to doesn't like you, doesn't admit you exist?
Well, for me, it didn't happen at school. At school, I was, with my personal experiences, which if anyone has heard me talk before, then, it's quite known out there. I was being sexually abused and stuff and things like that. Yeah. So at school, it never actually came out because I was having loads of other stuff to deal with. For me, it was after I'd left Jehovah's Witnesses, after I'd left school, I was, I'd always been taught that you have to have a sexuality, so I ended up in a relationship with a woman, and I was with her for maybe 2 years, and it dawned on me because I never wanted to have sex with her. It was always her. It was always her who would instigate the sexual intercourse, and for me, I never got any pleasure out of it or anything like that. And in the end, the relationship broke apart because I only wanted to be with her romantically. I didn't want to be with her sexually, and she couldn't deal with that. And that's when I had to reassess my sexuality and try to research what it was. Because at the time I was like, well, there must be something wrong with me. So I'd gone to the doctors and was like, there's something wrong. The brain chemistry's messed up. There's anything you can do? And the doctor didn't even suggest that it was asexuality. They tried me on a couple of different medications and things. Same issue still occurred. And that's when I started doing some online research, and that's when I found Avon, the asexual network, and started chatting with a few people on there. My experiences mirrored a lot of other people's experiences, and that's when I discovered I was asexual.
And probably I would hope that you would provide me with the links to all this network, and I will add the link along with your Borg Skeptic's other channel in the description box below after the stream. When you watch this as replay, then you'll find all of the links, but these two links, the network and Borg Skeptic's other channel. But as for now, there is Borg Skeptic's main channel. And we have a few comments. I took this on the screen a while ago. Cat the Humanist says, hi there. Well, hey, Cat the Humanist. And our beloved Susan Brewer. Hello. Hi, Heidi and Katie. Heart, heart.
Hi, Susan. Hi, Kat. How are you doing?
Anyway, so how did when you refound yourself, finding the term asexual and getting in touch with other asexuals, how did that affect your life?
Well, it was an eye opener, really. It's you finally discover something that you are that you didn't realize you were, which is a relief in some ways, because up until that point you're thinking, there's something wrong with you. There's, you're mentally disabled or something like that, because that's what society is telling you are.
Yeah.
And then it's the same as discovering what you're trans. Really, is there's this aspect about yourself that you never even contemplated could actually exist.
Then there's the aspect of being trans. That is something you've spoken about publicly, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you have at least. How, when you combine, eventually when you came about the conclusion that or the realization rather, that you are both trans and asexual. That's a combination I have encountered before, but getting yourself to the point that you can, shall I say, admit that you're both. If admit is a word that I can use in this context, but how did the realization that you're both affect your life from going forward?
Well, I mean, personally, I think it's great, because it's like there's the amount of, I think everyone who's trans has had this experience where you'll have a theist come along who'll be like, oh, but being transsexual is wrong. The Bible says it's wrong. Homosexuality is forbidden within the Bible. That's why it's wrong. And but I love it, because I can go, well, I'm actually asexual as well, so I have no sexuality. You can't use the homosexuality thing that you keep going back on.
I ain't no queer.
Yeah, exactly.
So, has there? UK isn't all that religious as compared to from, but when you go across the pond, wow, that's one damn hellhole when it comes to that. But
especially in the south.
Yeah, when I go there, wow, maybe Susan can elaborate a bit, but I've been streaming about that whole skites when it comes to the legislation there. But have you ever heard or heard from someone else or encountered yourself any when it comes to well, but with being trans you probably have, but uh, have you ever come across any religious whack jobs saying that, in the Bible it says multiply and fill the earth or something?
Oh, yes, I've definitely used that argument before, many times. In fact, probably on a weekly basis, I get emails off people online who'll, just be emailing me to tell me how disgusting I am in the eyes of their God and all of that, and they'll quote all these different scriptures and everything, and you just got to shrug it off, don't you? Because
Yeah.
the delusional in my mind when they're saying things like that, and they're doing it just to get a freaking kick out of you. But
yeah, I guess it's just I don't. It's no matter what you do in sexuality wise, it will never please these religious whack jobs, um, because if you are asexual, it's an abomination because you're supposed to multiply and fill the earth. If you're queer, you should be stoned.
yeah,
Whatever, and if you're lesbian, you just should go and marry some sheepshagger, and,
yeah.
and have kids.
But they don't realise how contradictory it all is, because
Mm,
if you have too much sex, they come along and they say, if you are sexual and you're the thing, they're like, oh, but you should limit the amount of sex you're having and all of this, and
yeah,
to try to keep it just to these scenarios and in this little tiny box here. And then if you're asexual, they're coming along and they're going, oh, well, you should have more sex. How
yeah,
dare you not have sex? They can't make the bloody minds up.
yeah,
So they
and
contradict themselves.
yeah. Uh,
It should always come down to your own personal preferences. It's
yeah.
just like anything in life.
We have Mrs. Brewer being funny and using puns. I'm bi and stoned. Yeah, that's what what the Bible says. Be stoned. If you lie with mankind as with womankind, you shall be stoned. So
Yeah, it's all about the interpretation.
it's how you read. It's all the euphemisms and such.
Just make sure you only pass it to the left-hand side.
There now. Yeah, referencing my previous comment. Susan says, I have zero knowledge regarding asexuality. This is very interesting. I'm glad to hear that this is very interesting. And referencing this religious South, wish I was better informed regarding the legislative action in Arkansas. I've been heavily involved in other activism. Well, you've been in other activities, I know that, Susan. So, yes, and I heard it's Arkansas, not Arkansas. Lloyd, Mr. Evans had an issue with this some time ago. Yeah, it's ha ha ha, very funny, So, it's always, when it comes to religion, it's still, even though all kinds of sexual deviations are yeah, love you too, Susan. So whatever the deviation is once from once a week under the in the dark under the blanket the night before Shabbat. Everything else from that is wrong. So what? So how can you live in this society? Huh? It's even you being asexual, you're still a sinner even without being trans.
Yeah, so it's. Oh, sorry, my dog has still got a bit of a cough there. Yeah, so it, as I said before, it can be hard to live in the society because of the it's just there's a stigma related to it, and people try to treat you differently, try to treat you like you're something less than them because of you're not having a sexuality. But then again, it's easier to live because you don't have the sexual stigmas yourself, so that doesn't bother you. So it's a bit of give and take. It just makes me sad that the society isn't the knowledge of asexuality isn't out there. The awareness isn't there, and it's not so much for me because I accept myself being asexual, accept myself being trans, and I'm okay with it. So I don't really feel bad about it. It's the other people who are still trapped inside the sexual world that are asexual. That I get messages of people quite regularly asking me what it means to be asexual, what that actually is, because they think that they may be asexual. Because they explain their feelings within their marriages and things like that, and quite clearly they're asexual. But then they're married, and they're stuck within that sexual realm because they were never taught about asexuality, and they marry to try and find their sexuality. And that just makes me quite sad.
It is saddening, really, really saddening. It's sort of because, as I said before, there is a strict. There are norms to sexuality, and I can only imagine how hard it is for an asexual if you happen to live in the wrong settings. It's impossible to find any information regarding asexuality, because anything else than cis straight is a sin, and it is wrong. How do you go about even looking something else, because you're in that mindset of being stigmatized and being somehow mentally diseased.
And the ones that I get messaging me who are stuck in these marriages, 8 out of 10 times are men as well, which I think just adds an extra level of stigma, because for men it's very much a sexual world out there. It's very much you have to want to have sex. There's no either or in that situation. It's especially within religious settings, it's the man it's the woman who's pleasing the man. It's always the man that wants to have sex more. And if you're stuck in a marriage and you are asexual and you are a man, how do you present that to the world?
You don't, because
exactly.
You just don't.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, you just don't, because as you said, that it's the man who please is the woman who pleases the man, and what if the man doesn't? It's like as if the man doesn't, the woman doesn't please enough.
Yeah.
Uh, the woman then the woman is not good enough by this logic. If she can't get the man want her, she's not good enough. It's and then it goes further. It goes it goes even further. And if the man doesn't want it, you know, um, yeah, I'll take from Susan. The stigma here is so intense. I didn't come out till I was 30, and 40 years later, people still freak out sometimes. It's weird. Yes, it is weird, Susan. It is weird. It's 2021. So why is there? Why do you think there is a stigma with being asexual?
As I mentioned earlier, it's those little boxes inside people's heads. We have a structure, and we're taught from a very young age that there's a certain way that things have to be. We see this in the home, parents teaching children that things are a certain way. In the churches, the religion teaching that things have to be a certain way. Even in the schools, to the fact that things have to be a certain way, and then there's certain things like asexuality that are just completely left out of the curriculum. And so from a very young age, we're brought up with building these constructs, these social constructs, which then you come into adulthood with those constructs already built. That's an entire neural network inside your head, which that's built out, that everything has to fit within that network. If it doesn't, then it's abnormal, it's inhuman, it's different, and has to be pushed away. And we've seen that time and time again through the religious rights for atheists. We've seen that with the whole gay movement and the hatred, homophobia, the trans movement and transphobia. And we're seeing it now with, asexuality and, people being against that as well. So it's all about the human race progressing and education building up to a level where it's either these concepts are all built into that network, or you just don't have that network built out, and you're not trying to put people into those little boxes.
Yeah, I think in my Friday Facts episode, I think I talked about the sort of asexual ways of certain religious, like what they called eunuchs, that are talked about as far back as the Old Testament, that they were respected. These people had been in religious settings, as well as the service of kings and emperors, and most of these eunuchs and other equivalents had been asexual, not just some forcefully castrated men, but just purely asexuals.
Well, I can imagine that if you were in that time period, then if you were asexual, then that would be a way that you would be able to, going into the service, whether it be as a eunuch to a king or something, or whether it be becoming a priest with vows of celibacy and stuff like that, then that would be a way for you to live as an asexual openly without having the stigma.
But why do you think that these people who were servants to kings, emperors, were in monasteries, even in early Christian monasteries, perhaps even some bishops, etc., etc. And these people were not considered sinners or an abomination. If
Because
they
they were doing
were,
it in service to an authority.
yeah.
That was the official stance of it.
Mm,
So, and it was all about, back in those days, it was all about loyalty.
mm,
So, if you're in service to someone, they need to ensure that you're going to be loyal to them.
mm,
Someone who's in a world that is primarily sexual.
mm,
How do you trust someone who, in your service, who is got a very high likelihood of being attracted to your wife, or having it off with one of your concubines or something.
mm-hmm,
So there was that level of automatic loyalty there, because you can guarantee that this person isn't going to want to, have it off with any of your wives or your concubines or your daughters or what have
or
you. So
whatever,
for a
yeah.
king, that would be quite an important distinction.
And coming to what it is now, being being an asexual nowadays is being an abomination. You don't in many books, school books, you don't even exist.
Yeah. I
How does
haven't read a
that? How does
book
that?
yet which has on sexuality, which openly accepts that sexuality is even a thing. So
Mm-hmm. What do you think? So, what is nowadays in in what kind of ways would asexuality affect your life now as an adult?
um, well, it's like, I can imagine it is. Uh, it for me, it doesn't really affect me too much. It's not the thing that really comes into, apart from when I'm, talk to certain people with, and they ask about my sexuality, and I say I'm asexual, and I get the stigma that's related to that. Apart from that, it doesn't really affect me too much. But I can imagine it's something that affects other asexuals a hell of a lot more, especially those that are in full-time work. Because
Mm-hmm.
you've got this whole thing as the office romance, which is quite a big thing within the social aspect of work and things.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine that and I have spoke to a few people that are in this situation, and they are viewed as sort of lesser within the work setting,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not engaged as much in the whole social aspect of of the workplace, of society itself. So yeah, there's that aspect of it. Now, obviously, you can be asexual, aromantic, and all of that, and that plays into it.
Mm-hmm.
But so you can be asexual and aromantic
Mm-hmm.
as well, or you can be asexual and be romantic.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't understand that distinction.
No.
And within our society, if you're romantic, then you must be sexual as well. It's romance and sexuality is completely linked. And I think this is where education needs to change, because
Yeah.
we need to separate these things out into what they actually are.
Yeah. It's something that I've I've encountered before because I or in I there's someone I know and I've been someone I was involved with for some time, and they are a romantic but very sexual,
Hmm.
uh, which I I was already aware, of course, that the that there is a distinction between romantic and sexual orientation. For example, being pansexual, homo-romantic. But people, you are right in the way that many people need education, that there are two different things, sexual and romantic orientation. Uh, because many people, I would assume, think that if you're gay, or if you define yourself as a homosexual, or a pansexual, that if you're gay, homosexual, that you're attracted to both, that you're romantically and sexually attracted to men, which might not always be the case. You might be homosexual and pan-romantic, for example.
Exactly.
People need education on this.
Yeah. And it's something that even as an asexual, it's something that even I had to learn. I mean, this isn't something that came naturally even to someone like me. I had to discuss this within the wider community of asexuals, discussing it with many, many different people to actually, formulate the way it is, the way that it's meant to be, and the many different states of all of this. It's just like the trans spectrum or the gender spectrum. This is a spectrum as well, and you've got the romantic spectrum and the sexual spectrum, and you can sit anywhere on either one of those, and there's loads of different ways that you can be. But even within the wider community of asexuals, it's still something, because there isn't any sort of structure to it. There's no actual education surrounding this. It's still something which it differs from person to person that you talk to, which is quite sad considering the percentages of people that do identify in some way as asexual or aromantic.
We have a comment from Susan. If it's not too personal, Katie, do you have romantic feelings still, or did the breakup put the kibosh on that?
I am not romantic anymore. I'm aromantic now. I thought I was romantic at the time. It turned out I'm actually intellectually attracted to people. So I can get quite close to people when I am intellectually. Oops, sorry, my dog's coughing again. So I can get close to people if I feel a strong connection to them intellectually. And I can I can create very, very, very close friendships with people. But other than that, I don't want to. I would never. For me, there's no physical aspect to it at all. There's no I have to be around that person constantly. I have to be able to hug and touch and all of that. I mean, I haven't touched another human being in over 8 years now. It's something that just completely grosses me out. So with me, there's a very strong personal space thing. Nobody can come within that space. And I'm not going to want any sexual thing with anyone. Romantically, I'm not I don't build any sort of I have to be around somebody all the time. I have to be doing things to make other people happy and and things like that. It is basically just very, very close friendships.
Well, Susan saying cool. So our friendship is solid, smiley heart.
Of course, Susan.
Yeah, Susan, you're so sweet. Always such a sweet woman. So, hang on, something else here. I'm not an intellectual, but you're my buddy. Oh, hey, Susan,
I think
I
you're
think you're
very
an
intelligent,
intellectual.
Susan.
No,
Yeah. Give yourself more credit.
yeah, exactly. Give yourself more credit. Anyway, so I think we would be perhaps going in 10 to 15 minutes. What do you say? Or
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah, all right. Anyway, so what would be your if you were to meet your say 15-year-old 14 15-year-old self, what would you tell your 14 and 15-year-old self about what about all this asexuality stuff? That in 20
Um,
years you'll be, it'll be okay in 20 years.
yeah, basically not to worry. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing mentally up with you. You're absolutely fine. There's just this aspect that you were never taught about, you were never told about. This part of life that exists that nobody else is ever going to admit does exist. And spread the word because there's so many people that I've met throughout my life that, thinking back now, they've told me things about themselves, and they were clearly had some form of asexuality or aromantic feelings, and they didn't even realize either. Which is why I think streams like this are extremely important, because we need to build up awareness for all of this. Just like back in the 60s and 70s, there was awareness for the gay community, and also there was then further awareness being built up for the trans community. Now we need to start building up awareness for the asexual community.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, much of this progress came out of Stonewall in back in '69, of which lovely Susan was kind enough to talk about with me last year. Actually, I think it was the second live stream of this very channel.
It was a very good stream, that one. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did too. It was one of my absolute favorites streams ever of that I've ever made. Yeah, if there is now, what kind of having lived your life as an asexual so far, and more or less somewhat aware, or now being aware of your asexuality, what kind of education or what kind of information packages would you add to what is taught at school in sex ed? For example, if there was a package of LGBTIQA plus package if such package was inserted into the British school system, what would you, based on your own experience so far in your life as an asexual, and how asexuals are being treated in society, what would you put in that package about asexuality?
Well, within the sex ed, it would definitely be so expand upon the whole sexual education to include asexuality. So not just teaching about homosexuality, but also teach about asexuality.
Mm-hmm.
I would also like to introduce a full gender studies program, which is something that I didn't get when I was at school. I'm not. Conspiracy Cats would probably be able to give more information on whether we have that now within the education system. But full gender studies to discuss transsexuality, transgenderism as a whole, all of the different aspects of the gender spectrum. But then also to expand upon asexuality in relation to gender.
Mm-hmm.
And then also expand upon the romantic spectrum as well, and to discuss more about that. But then you'd also need a humanity to extend the humanities section as well of education to deal with how all of that relates to society, and obviously discuss the violations of people's rights within a general, societal aspect.
Right. And would there be, in addition, adding to sex ed, would you think that there is something that needs to be added to perhaps should be some society studies or something that something should be added regarding asexuality, like social studies? I don't know what the subject is called.
Yeah, I think that's what I was talking about with Hope Humanities is the social studies. Yeah, so definitely, yeah. I mean, you need to, I think we just need, like I was touching on before, is that this people don't realize about the societal structure that we're all taught, that we have this very rigid structure for society, and people don't realize how that can be a problem. They think it's a strength, but for a lot of people, it's a big problem. And causes a big problem in their lives. So we need to sort of teach that things aren't rigid. Things are, when it comes to society, things are actually quite fluid. And to expect differences, because everyone is unique, everyone is an individual.
Exactly.
So don't put people into these little boxes. Don't try to expect people to be a certain way. Expect them to be different, and then be open to that difference when it comes along.
Excellent. And a question from Susan. I think this will probably be the last one we'll be taking tonight. And Katie, could you tell older self how powerful and helpful her activism would be?
Thank you very much, Susan. Yeah, I think I would definitely mention that. Although I wouldn't like to big myself up a lot, especially not to me older self. That's could be a problem with arrogance there.
Yeah. All right, and a comment from Cat the Humanist. I actually find it weird that people have issues with people being asexual. Yes, actually, me too. And Susan saying, me too, Cat. I mean, what people finding it weird that someone is asexual. Why is it weird? Why?
Well,
it's weird that it's weird.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Yeah, it's definitely weird that it's weird. It's no, there should be no problem with it at all. In fact, I think it should be respected a hell of a lot more than what it is, because
exactly.
There's less problems that can occur with if you become friends with an asexual. There's less issues that can occur in that friendship. Because that person's never going to be sexually attracted to you. So they're never going to, there's never going to be any of that friction that can happen when someone's attracted to you and you're not attracted to them.
Yeah.
So it should be valued a lot more than what it is.
Exactly. I think we've had quite a bit to talk about tonight.
I've enjoyed it.
So, do you have any what shall I call, not well, closing arguments is maybe not the best expression for this, but closing arguments?
Yeah, we need to build up the awareness to asexuality, and the on the sexuality spectrum a lot more. And so, anybody that's been watching this, please go away and build the awareness. Tell people about asexuality and spread the word. Because there's people out there that are trapped within the sexual realm who are asexual and don't even realize that they are. And they're thinking that there's something wrong with them, and that isn't a good way for them to live. So the more awareness we can build, the more chance we can have of building up the realization for these people that are trapped.
Right. So I'll take one more comment and then we are off. From Susan, this has been terrific, my friends. We'll share on Facebook as soon as you sign off. I have pansexuals in my family. Hans. Well, that is very sweet of you, Susan. Thank you. Anyway, for those who follow my channel, tomorrow evening at the same time, 9 p.m. UK time, will be an episode of Friday Facts. So within 24 hours, please tune in. And there will be links in the description box below. Borg Skeptic's main channel, and I will link her other channel, as well as the appropriate links that I promised. I'll put them in the description box. You can check them out. There are links to my playlists. There's season 1, season 2, Monday news, Friday Facts, another episode coming tomorrow, and Special Files. This one is in Special Files folder or playlist, you'll find it there. And a Sunday Special playlist. There's only one episode there right now, but more is to come at some point. More fun stuff there. And there are also links to my 2 Discord servers, Hades Corner, my channel server, and then you'll find also a link to LGBT plus safe space. That safe space server is meant to be as the name suggests, a safe space for all LGBT plus people. Myself, I'm there daily, or at least I check it daily, and try to discuss there daily if necessary, and I feel like it. And also my admins and my moderators, of which Borg Skeptic is one, keep it nice, tidy, and safe. So, without further ado, from my home studio, Stefan, and back to saying bye. And I will see you tomorrow with Friday Facts. Bye.